Good morning, everyone. Always happy to be here. I'm talking this morning about something that came to mind, believe it or not, as I was watching one of those many detective shows on TV where nobody can figure out the solution, of course, until somebody finds the magic bullet. Now, a magic bullet is one that solves the unsolvable mystery. It defies physics. It's difficult to find, and it never shows up before Act 3. Its evocation implies all other paths of inquiry have been exhausted, and failure is imminent. Its ultimate finding, however, proves not all paths of inquiry were truly exhausted, but that those looking demonstrated limited thinking. We face a multitude of social challenges whose solutions common consciousness divides into an either-or camp whose advocates are blind to other possibilities. The universe of spirit, or God if you prefer, contains all conceivable knowledge and knowledge yet unconceived. It contains answers to questions yet unasked and questions yet imagined. The magic bullet awaits our awakening to its presence. Now, if you've been around New Thought thinking for a while, you've probably heard the expression that making perfection the enemy of the good is a path to failure. And for an example, just look at the anti-democratic forces gaining strength in this country and around the world. 50 years ago, our current state of affairs was unthinkable. But employing a long game of fear and distrust, one school board, one town council, one county, one state, and one judge at a time, the enemies of democracy have gerrymandered voting districts, dismantled civil rights, enacted outrageous voting restrictions, targeted selected boogeymen, and woven a totally false narrative of doom and gloom from whole cloth, simply to grab power so those who need it least prosper at the expense of those with the least to give. And the sell is that this is the story of a God who loves us. I beg to differ. The spiritual presence I believe in does not put its thumb on the scale of human interaction. The spirit I believe in trusts me and all of us to do the right thing, to choose beliefs, thoughts, and actions that move the common consciousness toward a seamless union of spirit and human, conscious and unconscious thought existing as one. Now, there is an argument in the universe whose thesis is that people do not want freedom. They want order. This argument has the merit of containing a kernel of truth. Most of us do want to live in an orderly society. The untold lie herein is the cost of order in society. If, like me, you're a fan of Victorian-era melodrama, you are familiar with the strict rules of high society of the time, whose violation could lead to scandal and ruin. But ironically, outside the narrow band of people who could afford to live that high society life, Those rules were totally meaningless. Yet those rules could and often did affect the lives of those who scoffed at them. The classes could not intermingle, for example, so those already excluded had no chance to excel. Those rare mavericks who did break through were never really accepted in society, but rather acted as change agents that forced society to evolve. An orderly society seems to bring one major question. Whose order is it? If you've been following my presentations long enough, you've heard me talk of two basic types of people in the world. Those who create rules for every conceivable situation and expect everyone else to stay within the guardrails. Now, in my business, we call those people condo commandos. You may be familiar with. But on the other side of the scale, there are people who support a general list of guidelines to level the playing field, where beneficial results can be obtained by jumping off the paved road and traveling cross country where the situation calls for it, simply arriving at a mutually beneficial conclusion without, necessarily having a rule to follow to get there. In the first example, in Victorian society, the rules define life. The second example defines humanity. We are a sloppy bunch, and yet we are created in the image of God. My conclusion, God or spirit is a mischievous being. It gave humans freedom of choice, something it did not even reserve for itself. Spirit created a universe where it is forced by its own nature to love us unconditionally, to manifest for us whatever we believe, then turned us mischievous beings loose with no operator's manual to find our way back to spiritual wholeness. We even had to figure out for ourselves that we better find our way back because the physical universe we are living in has a use-by date that science tells us runs out in just 4 billion years, which at the time probably seemed like a lot, but God didn't have to rely on Congress. Now, a kernel of truth is introduced to add validity to accompanying false statements that sound true when presented without context. For example, President so-and-so wants you to suffer such and such. General statement. Truth. You are suffering such and such. The untold truth. President so-and-so's hands are tied by a hostile Congress that will not act. Note, not cannot act, but will not act. The president has offered solutions, but the Congress does not even bring it up for a vote, nor does it offer its own solutions for consideration. Result, you continue to suffer such and such, and you're looking for someone to blame. The kernel of truth has validated our feelings, and the hypocrites lead us to an inaccurate conclusion by feeding us a false narrative that supports their desired outcome, but does not stand up to critical review. Alternatively, some situations require sacrifice. For example, you are trapped in a burning building, and the only way out is through the fire. Your choice, surrender and perish, or protect yourself the best you can and charge through the fire, recognizing there will be injury even if you do survive. The kernel of truth, there is no pain-free choice. The lie, President so-and-so wants you to be injured or killed. The untold truth, President so-and-so's only connection to the fire is that they've come to rescue as many as possible and put the fire out. The result, you are burned and the first person you see is the one who came to help you. With a little misleading information, you think that person is responsible for your pain. The truth becomes difficult to recognize within a smokescreen of constant and consistent lies. But spirit is not impressed by deflection. Spirit knows the truth. Spirit is truth. Spirit sees the truth and will take us there whenever we release our prejudices. When we recognize our own prejudices or even accept we are susceptible to prejudices we cannot recognize, the magic bullet starts to glow and sing. We may be 100% right in our thinking and know our solutions are the best for everyone. But when we recognize we cannot get everyone on the same page and recognize the value of half a loaf over nothing, the magic bullet shines and screams. When we remind ourselves that even those who oppose us are made by the same creator, are products of the same common consciousness, and are equally invested in their point of view as we, the magic bullet burns roaring in our hand. The magic bullet is that solution no one could see when they limited their search to only their own concept of perfection. It is the solution only visible to those willing to forego their preconceived limitations and open their search to a wider horizon. It may require a leap in imagination to look where common consciousness says nothing can be found. It may require a leap of faith. It may require accepting that even a pain fed by a lie is a real pain. And recognizing the pain as real establishes the first common ground, a truth we can all agree to. Now, with some common ground to work with, perhaps we can agree to forego other judgments. Just accept that concerns are real and be willing to examine them together. With common ground established and judgments held in abeyance, the truth begins to emerge and the lies fall away. Our spiritual truth is only obtainable when we all understand how this spirit thing works. We are all of the one and are striving toward the one while experiencing this human diversion. We have always had helpers among us, those who know intuitively that we sink or swim together, always willing to reach out a hand to someone who has stumbled and offer them support, a little help along the way. Our evolution trends toward there being more helpers advancing the common consciousness. Over the centuries, We have been able to develop technologies that have relieved us from so many of the day-to-day burdens of simple survival, that we've been able to use our minds more to simply contemplate our existence and our place in the universe and our effect on the common consciousness. And by growing more aware of our part in this spiritual thing, we have begun strengthening our human bond and our spiritual union. Overall, the outlook is favorable. After all, we've got another 4 billion years to work it out, and we're nowhere near the end of Act 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Glen.
You're welcome.
That was a ride through which we now have to sort. The floor is now open for discussion in this subject presented to us, the magic bullet. So let's dive into it. Let's uncover this magic bullet.
If not, I'll have to read the 30 minutes I cut out of it.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As I listened to you, you offered up the consideration of freedom versus order. And in your explanation you gave, you said that there are two approaches that you have. One who creates who creates rules. You call them the commando. And then you said the other is a general set of guidelines. What you didn't offer up was a label for one who uses the general set of guidelines.
Those people can't be labeled as easily. You may find one for yourself. I welcome hearing suggestions, but the very nature of those people, they tend to avoid being labeled.
Well, in our community, you know that we label, so. And so that's why I was listening for the label, because that is a part of what we do. We do label, regardless of the unintentional aspect of our statements. We do label. Yeah. Well, I refer back to that portion because in listening to another mystic, they talked about having just guidelines, not having rules or regulations, not having standards of measurements that is required for achieving and completing whatever is being sought after. They said that those people are oftentimes referred to as spiritualists or esoterics.
I'll accept that.
Yeah. So I was just sharing to see if you had a label for us.
There's one the term creative comes into it, but there's another word that goes with it right now. It's escaping. You may have heard it, but yeah, but generally the terms you use would be acceptable, accurate. Why not? And those general guidelines are the ones that I think that most civilized people can agree to, that, we shouldn't go around stealing from other people. We shouldn't kill other people. What's mine is mine. What's yours is yours. Respect those things. The general rules of business that people apply that try to keep the playing field level. As I said, we don't trade on insider information, for example. I mean, maybe we would if we could, but that makes it unfair. And so, and other general rules like that. And there's a lot of such guidelines that are useful in a society. We kind of have to have them. But as far as saying that certain types of cars are not allowed in your parking lot, or that the car has to be parked head in for no particular reason, you know, my job is to enforce rules. Saying part of my weekday job is to enforce the rules of communities, and some of them don't seem to make a lot of sense. Like some places have a rule that say your car has to be parked head into the parking space, and some people just don't like to park that way. They like to back their car in. Sometimes it's safer for them to get out if it's backed in, but the rule says it has to be head in. So I'm in a position where it's like, I'll enforce the rule if somebody complains about it, but I'm not going to go looking for that violation. There are rules that say, you can't have a party that goes past 10 o'clock at night. And that's kind of tough, for people that are having a party. It's probably going to go past 10 o'clock. Now, if it becomes obnoxious, obviously, there's an issue. But does it have to be a hard and fast rule? And a lot of people really get upset if those small, what I consider unimportant rules are violated. And then they get just as upset as if somebody had stolen their purse, which to me is a much more grievous offense and something I think we can all accept shouldn't happen.
Okay, Reverend Glen, you touched on a part in your talk when you said, is God mischievous or something when he gave us choice and that sort of thing. And I've been thinking about that since I was a child, where how I actually framed it then was God bored? Why he gave us this path based on what do you call it now? The other forms of religion that says you have to do all these things to remain or to move to God and for God to save you, So when you touched on that section of your talk, it brought me back to those early years, and at that time I might be considered as blaspheming or something. So
you and me both. No, my awakening in spirit for myself has really allowed me to personally recognize that this whole spirit, God thing, whatever you choose to call it, we take it way too seriously. I mean, when you understand that spirit is this loving energy that really just, its whole purpose of existence is to provide for us what we believe in, and simply says, believe in good stuff, and eventually we're all going to come back together. I mean, I personally, I'm a Star Trek fan. I think most of you know this, that, there are episodes of Star Trek where people exist simply as forms of energy. They've given their human form as long since they've evolved out of it on other planets. And Captain Kirk had to interact with these people in the early series. And that kind of set, to me, it says, that's what it is to return to spirit. That's what it is for us to give up all of our physical needs and wants and simply exist as this energy that has no other purpose than to say, I hear what you're asking for. I understand you believe this is truly what you need, and here it is. And I love you so much as a God, as a spirit, of which we are all one. It is so easy for us in this human form to kind of forget that notion that, hey, wait a minute, there isn't two of us. You know, we are the spirit thing at the same time that we are this human thing. And so we tend to think of giving and receiving when in fact, yeah, spirit's only giving to itself what itself has asked for. And the mischievous part of it is that in its wisdom, it somehow said, you know, I have all this information, it's all there, but none of it means anything to me because I have no questions because I already have all the answers. So let me create this creature, and just for fun, I'll put it on a finite planet, and then I'll give it total freedom of choice because it's going to think of stuff to do that I can't even think of because I already know everything, so I can't think of these questions. But these creatures will be able to think of these questions and really mess things up. And then eventually, with their wisdom and their union with all, you know, come back to the fold and again be these energy spirits that are part of the whole. I mean, don't ever try to make sense of this stuff. You know, I mean, this is where the leap of faith comes in. This is where we have to say, okay, I kind of get it. I'm there, I'm on, but you know what? It's a cloud. And if I try to sit on that cloud, I'm going to fall right through it because it's a cloud. It's not a rock, you know. But that's the beauty of it all. It's like we are in it. We are seeing it from the outside. We are in it from the inside. And we're here to have fun with it. And try to be good to others while you're doing it. Try to be good to yourself because that's the path that brings us back. And like I said, we only got 4 billion years to figure this out. If we haven't by then, we're going to be toast. So, you know, I think we get better at it all the time. And then we take a step backwards, and then we take 2 steps forward. You know, it's a dance. And I hope right now the rest of you can't hear my neighbor out working on his lawn. He's not a blasphemer. He works 6 days a week. He has to do his lawn on Sundays. So.
That was a beautiful expansion on your talk, Reverend Glen, as you try to show us how spirit works in terms of how we think and how, you know, we function. I really enjoyed that expansion that you went through. As you
yeah, I think some of the trouble we've had in our human experience over the last 100,000 years is that those people that have to have a rule for everything and you have to stay within the guardrails, they keep trying to define it, what it is. And in my mind, it's like, I am never going to fully understand this. And I got to be okay with that. And as long as I'm okay with that, all your little petty problems don't bother me that much. You know, just try to stay within that much wider definition. And I'll understand it when I get there, you know? It's like, people say sometimes, well, what happens to you after you die? Well, you know, one scenario might be that somebody meets you there with a big binder, loose leaf binder, and says, what would you like to know first? You know, what questions did you bring with you? Let's go and get those taken care of right away. And then we'll take you through the indoctrination and you can go be the spiritual being that you were put here to be. You know, that's just one concept. You know?
So are there any other Aglow participants who wants to jump into this discussion? I haven't seen any hands, but I'm opening up to further discussion.
Reverend Mizell put it into the chat box. What was the alternative to the magic bullet?
The magic bullet, the alternative is taking a hard, fast position and sitting in one corner of the ring or the other and never finding a solution because you're looking in the wrong place. I mean, even if I said, as I said, if my position, if my solution that I could bring to the table and put down, if that is 100% the best possible solution and you can't see it, and I need you to buy in to go anywhere, we're going nowhere. Because if I won't move off of my position and I can't convince you of the value of my position, and I need you to see it, and you can't see it, we're not going anywhere. So the alternative is pretty much failure on all fronts, to be blunt. Unless, of course, I can take full power and your opinion no longer matters, in which case I've just created a universe that can't work for everyone because I've just excluded you and I've crossed my own, you know, I've created my own failure by doing that.
Okay, that was a beautiful discussion.
Thank you.